Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for coming in today. My name is Rachel. I go by the Nail Therapist here on YouTube, and I own Revive Nail Studio in Leesburg, Virginia, where I focus on restoring the health of your nails and your skin using all natural and non-toxic products. In today's pedicure, it will be heavily focused on callus care. This particular client, she has just normal nail condition, is just a little bit of thickness, a little bit of cuticle, but her soles of her feet are heavily calloused and she has the beginnings of fissures forming. So if you have any of those concerns, this is the pedicure that you want to watch. There's going to be lots of information about how to care for your heels and your calluses in a safe manner. So stay tuned. Just wanted to say thank you to those who have given me some good feedback and critiques on my previous videos. I'm trying very hard to accommodate your requests. One of the requests was to lower the music volume, and so I finally figured out how to download my own music instead of relying on YouTube's audio files. The problem with YouTube's audio files is that you can only lower the volume of the music to a certain point, and it's out of your hands. But I finally figured out how to do it on my editing software, and so believe it or not, this music that you hear behind my voice right now is at 1%. So let me know if this is still too loud, and maybe I just won't do any music behind my voice at all. For those of you who are new to my channel, welcome. I do things a little bit differently here at my studio. As you can see, I started off with my pedicure dry. I do not usually soak my clients prior to working on their nails and cuticles, and that is because I find that it's easier to remove dry skin and cuticles when it's dry and not soaked with water and plumped up. That being said, there are times where I do start with the client soaking. Just depends on the person. And now what I'm doing right now is using a carbide bit to thin down the great toenails, because they are a lot thicker and harder than I'd like them to be. I'm using very gentle sweeping motions, not using a lot of pressure at all. I'm letting the speed of the rotation do the job for me, and always checking back in with my client to make sure that it's comfortable. Sometimes there can be some vibration, sometimes there can be heat buildup, so you always want to check in with your client, make sure that they're doing okay. And usually it's fine as long as you don't press into the nail and really grind into the nail. Otherwise you'll leave a big gouge. This particular client has type 2 diabetes, and she also has the beginning stages of neuropathy in her feet. She doesn't have any outward signs of poor circulations just yet, but again, whenever you are working on someone who is diabetic, there is always a risk of poor circulation and in turn bad wound healing, so you have to be extra careful not to cut them or break their skin in any way, so that it can leave them vulnerable to infection. Which is why I actually prefer using the e-file when I'm working on people with diabetes, because it tends to be a lot more gentle and less likely to tear the skin than nippers or a regular nail file. Sometimes a regular nail file can slice into the skin if it's too sharp on the edges. So just be very careful about that as well. I'm using the carbide bit on the skin here as well because it is quite thickened. Typically you don't want to use a carbide bit on normal calluses. If they are extremely thickened, then it's a lot safer to use the carbide bit because you do need some extra grit to cut away at the excess skin. And now here I'm actually switched to a diamond bit, so this is just going back in and doing some gentle exfoliation in the cuticle area and the sidewalls, and maybe a little bit around the skin of the toes. With this client, I like to think about what I could have done differently to change the time frame or outcome. And one of the things I probably should have done with her from the start is apply a layer of the 42% urea gel. Once I do that, it can sit on the skin where the skin is thickest and start to break down the keratin. When urea is above 30%, it can start to act as a keratinolytic, I can't say that word. Keratinolytic agent. And anyway, that just means it breaks down the keratin, the cells that make up the skin and the nails. And so you can use it on thickened nails as well if you wanted to try and soften a thick, hard nail. 42% urea gel is a great way to do that over a period of a few days. But anyway, back to her feet. She has really heavy calluses around her heels and some fissures that are starting to form. So if I would have put some urea on her heels, the upcoming callus removal might not have been so difficult. The other option that I could have done is just started her off in the water rather than starting her off dry. So next time I see her, which will be in about 4 weeks, I'll probably do the urea treatment first and see how that works out. And then if that's not as great, then I might try the foot soak first and see if that's better than the urea treatment. I have been debating whether or not I wanted to add the sachet callus treatment product into my arsenal of things I could use. I've done some reading on it, and it looks to be very safe, non-toxic. It does contain urea and another agent that is, I want to say it's very like a basic, like it's not acidic, it's basic. And it just takes a few minutes for it to really break down skin, and then you just scrape off a lot of the layers all at once. So I've been postponing it because it's quite expensive to buy, and I don't know if I want to spend the money and if it's really necessary to spend the money. But if it does cut back on my treatment time by like 10 minutes, then it probably is worth it. If you use the sachet callus treatment, leave a comment for me and let me know your thoughts on it and whether or not you find it to be worth the investment. I'm just going over these toes one more time with the diamond bit because I noticed when I was buffing that the surface of the nail was a little uneven. So I'm just trying to even it out and make it nice and smooth. On this next toe, I want you to see right where this circle is, there is almost like a valley in her toenail, and that was from her taking an e-file at home. I guess she has an e-file where she tried to thin out her nail a little bit, and just she wasn't able to do it from her vantage point. So now she's got a really deep concave valley in her nail that's going to take a little while to grow out, unfortunately. But I just want to let you know what that white-ish patch was on her large toenail. Sorry about the toes being slightly out of frame here. I was talking with her and it was not paying attention to where she was in the picture. So I do figure it out eventually, but it's going to take a minute. So sorry about that. And that reminds me, I did have another suggestion where it was asked of me to leave the filing and buffing sounds in the video, and unfortunately I just can't do that, as far as I know, at least yet. The audio that I have picks up all of our conversation, and I want to protect their confidentiality, and I don't want their information being broadcast all over the internet. So that's why I choose not to have our conversation on my YouTube channel. I'm just doing this for educational purposes and not so much for um, the eavesdropping. I personally don't like listening to other people's conversations. I feel like a little bit of a peeping Tom. But also, the other problem with recording conversations is that you don't always feel like you can discuss everything that you normally would. A lot of my clients have known me for years, and we talk about a lot of personal things. And so I just want to reassure them that nothing that they say is going to be out there in the internet ether. So um, if I can figure out a way to just take out the conversation and leave the sounds, then I will try that. But as far as I know now, I just don't have a way to do that. So this is after the left foot has been soaking for a few minutes. I'm choosing to do this foot first over the right foot because this one has less heavy callus buildup than the other side. But I believe I end up soaking them both twice on each side anyway. Okay, so I'm taking the FootLogix foot file and trying to get the bulk of the heavy thickness off of her heels and the balls of her feet. When I pan up closer to her great toe, you will see that the skin is frayed. And what that should tell you is that she's probably used one of those cheese grater type foot files at home, which I found out that she did. So we had a long discussion about throwing that out and not using it anymore. And if you are a person who has used the cheese grater type foot file, the reason you don't want to use one of those is because it tends to tear up the skin deeper than the actual callus, and that creates a signal in your body to protect the area more. So basically a callus is there because it's protecting an area that has a lot of friction or pressure being exerted upon it. And if a lot of that protection is just removed in one foul swoop, then the body goes into overdrive to protect it even more, and it creates even harder skin. So what you would like to do instead is to use a foot file that has either the sandpapery type surface or one of these stainless steel files that I'm using here, and that smooths out the callus and takes it down gradually as opposed to taking out big chunks. And you can see on her big toe right up there that it's kind of like frayed and has like a wavy appearance. It's because there's chunks of skin missing, and so that is no good, and it doesn't look good, it doesn't feel good, and it's not effective. So definitely throw away all your cheese graters out there and get a regular foot file that has sandpaper or the stainless steel, like the FootLogix foot file. I have those on my website. They're only $22, I think. Or you could go really expensive and get the angel feet foot files. I think those are like upwards of $50 to $90, depending on which size you get. But either way you go, definitely get rid of the cheese grater. Alright, so I got the bulk of the top layer of the skin off, and now I'm going back with a carbide bit on the skin that's sort of frayed and still thickened a little bit to smooth that out even further. It's going to take a little bit of time, so I'm going to let you enjoy the music and just watch. Let's talk a little bit about why people with diabetes tend to get heel fissures. Now, she doesn't have actual fissures just yet, they're just cracked. So a fissure is when the skin actually cracks past the epidermis into the dermis, and there's redness and sometimes bleeding involved. with her, she just has the top layer of the epidermis cracked, so she's getting close to having fissures. And that is dangerous, especially for a diabetic. The reason is, I think there are many reasons, and I think probably we don't know all of the reasons that there are. Some people with diabetes tend to have excessively sweaty feet, and that can plump up the skin, and then when they stop sweating, it dries, and that kind of constant back and forth of getting plumped up and going back to normal can stretch the skin out and cause little cracks. Some diabetic people are excessively dry on their feet, like in this instance, and so it just drying out your skin, having lack of moisture can lead to cracking. There is a theory that says that when you have neuropathy, it affects the body's ability to sense the right time to sweat, and so that's why the feet remain dry more often. I haven't seen the research on that, so I don't know exactly if that is valid or not, but it's possible. And so there's a loss of moisture at any rate, and so using the right type of moisturizer is important for those with diabetes, because because sometimes the skin gets a little thinned out, not necessarily on the sole of the feet, but on the top of the feet and the lower legs, and you don't want to occlude the body's ability to sweat. So using things that are heavy and occlusive, like Vaseline or Aquaphor or olive oil or even avocado oil, while it might seem like a good idea to put something heavy and thick on an excessively dry area, when you're dealing with somebody who has diabetes, that's not the best option, because you still want their skin to be able to breathe and produce sweat and evaporate that sweat. So using something like a shea butter is a great option, because it is non-occlusive and extremely moisturizing. Things that are sort of aloe vera based are great options too, but you'll have to reapply it several times because it does tend to evaporate a lot faster. I really like Cupuatsu butter, which is very similar in its properties to hyaluronic acid, in that it actually attracts moisture to itself and holds it. So you apply so I have a balm that has Cupuatsu butter in it, and it helps to moisturize the skin by holding the moisture within the skin. And it softens the skin quite a bit. It's wonderful. And we can't forget our old standby, urea. Urea is another great ingredient that is non-toxic, and the skin just loves it. So if you wanted to have a more moisturizing property to it, where it doesn't break down dead skin cells, then choose something that's under 30%, maybe in the 20% realm. If you want something that's going to break down heavy calluses, get something that has a higher than 30% or higher. And that's going to help soften and break down heavy calluses as well. If anybody is interested in the products that I use and recommend to my clients, I'll put them in the description box, as well as a link to each product on my website, and you can look at the ingredients there. My clients have been having great success with them so far. The 20% cream that I have has a very light lemony scent. It smells really good. And then the 30% urea stick, it has no scent at all, and it's for, like, this client here went home with some of that today, or when I saw her. And so that, on top of a foot file that we just went over that before, that will get you back some softer feet. And then after you've done some work and you are, at a place where your skin is nice and soft, then you don't have to do quite as much maintenance. So I just sprayed an enzymatic peel spray on her feet to help with just getting rid of some of the remaining excess skin, and I'm just going to rub it until it starts sloughing off. Okay, so I just found a study. I'm just going to read to you a little bit from the abstract about foot fissures in diabetics. And it says that it is known that autonomic neuropathy results in reduced sweat secretion, leading to fissures and ulcers. So autonomic neuropathy is just a fancy way of saying your nerves that deal with your automatic body processes, like sweating. And then it goes on to say that only 3.8% of people with diabetes have deep foot fissures, which are the dangerous ones where the dermis gets infected. So that's, and I don't know if that's a good or bad number. And then it just goes on to say that it is noteworthy that angiopathy was a newly identified factor related to deep fissures. Then they looked at whether or not angiopathy causes sweat gland atrophy on the heel skin, and it was found that the number of sweat pores in the heel skin was significantly lower in diabetic patients with angiopathy when they looked through a microscope at the skin. So that suggests that the sweat glands atrophy may occur in that population in the heel skin. So it's very specific. So that's interesting. So if you guys don't know what angiopathy means, it just means there's something wrong with the vessels, like veins and arteries. So to sum it up, basically, it sounds like because many who have deep foot fissures may have less sweat glands in the heel, so you're not sweating as much. The skin is going to be a lot drier and less durable. And so you would not only need the use of moisturizers, but you'd also need to do something to enhance the blood supply to the foot so that the skin remains intact. So another thing I probably should have done in the beginning was to use the e-file like I'm using it right now on the heels prior to even putting on the urea. As I'm working on the heels, because the feet have been soaking, the skin is moist, it's getting caught up in the bit, and it's not as effective when it is clogged with a bunch of skin. So that is why it's taking me a little bit of extra time to smooth these calluses down. And for this foot, I pulled out the diamond bit um, to smooth out some of the frayed skin that the carbide bit just couldn't get smoothed down all the way. So that's what I'm doing now, and then we'll do the foot moisturizing and massage after the final exfoliating peel spray application right after this. As a perfectionist, it's so hard for me to not get it all done in one session. But when you have a client come in who has a lot of things to address, it's not possible to get it perfect. And so, you know, you have to explain that to your client and make sure that they realize that the expectation is to get you better, but it may take a few sessions to get fully there, and then they have homework in between their appointments. And she actually said that to me before I even had a chance to say anything to her about it. She knew full out that this is going to take a couple of sessions at least to get back to a normal presentation. So it's always good to have that chat in the beginning of the appointment when you're taking a look at the condition of their feet, so that you're all on the same page. So because it's already a really long video, I'm not going to show any massage, but that's what we do next. And the before and after pictures are coming up. Here they are. If you've made it this far and you watch the whole thing, you are a rock star. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned something new. And I hope you come back to see her follow-up video as well as my other videos. If you guys have any questions or comments regarding anything, just put them in the comments. I love having a back and forth with you all. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope to see you again soon.